Welcome to part 5 of what is to be a 6-part little mini-series about my favorite Fire Emblem game, Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War. This is covering chapters 8 and 9, and if you have not seen the other parts, I highly recommend it. Not necessary, but it does kind of help build in a little bit of context of, or at least more of an emotional context of what's going on. We're just gonna dive right into it. There's no hemming and hawing like I'm doing now. I'm just going and all that sort of fun stuff. So that's it. Enjoy. With the Liberation Army's recent victories, the Thracian Peninsula has been thrown into turmoil. Not that this is really foreign to the region. Thracia is split up into north and south. The north possesses bountiful fields yielding sturdy, stalwart people, and Quan's family in Leinster held firm in protecting those lands from the south, where the dragon riders populate the skies between great jagged mountains, offering little comfort to its people. Also in the south, they do a lot of marauding and try to, spread their wings, we'll say. As king of the southern portion, Trevant's latest attempt was the Yid massacre. He played his hand well, opting to brazenly cut down Quan, Ethlin, and a sizable portion of Leinster's troops as they were trying to assist Sigurd. This happened back in chapter 5. As a result, Trevant took Altina, who is Quan and Ethlin's daughter and oldest child, as well as the Gaybolg. Let's peek at exactly what happened directly after the Yid massacre. While Alvis was moving pieces into place to take the throne, to mold Granveld how he so desired, Trevant eyed to simply bring glory to Thracia, to raise its standing amongst the other nations on the Youngdrel continent. After bringing Leinster down, he had his goal right there, right in his hands for the taking. However, Leptor's son Bloom, and just to connect the dots here, Bloom is the son of Leptor, who was the political enemy of Sigurd's father, and also fought Sigurd there in chapter 5. Bloom rushed into the region and was given it to rule. Thus, the South Thracians' push for expansion was quickly snuffed out. Trevant returned home, holding tight as an uneasy agreement, an alliance with Thracia and Granveld was made. Simply put, Thracia is unable to make much of a plan to push back against the Empire. Sure, they can hold down tight and defend their homeland, but the Empire's like, okay, we don't really want it. We're good right here. Basically, the Empire simply ignores the frothing, seething, impotent rage of Thracia, and they're just like, whatever. However, life has a funny way of playing out, as Bloom has been pushed out of Connaught by Celice and company. Along with them, Leif, Quan and Ethlin's son, is with them. He, with Nana and Finn, have gone from simply surviving to helping, now raising hell to retake what was lost, but also set to want revenge against Trevant for murdering his parents. As we begin chapter 8, we have 2 castles to protect, with Leif, Nana, and Finn up in Leinster. Celeste and company have Ulster under wraps, so that's good. However, Bloom is hell-bent on reclaiming what he had lost and sends a bunch of troops. There's less brewing and stewing, and a whole lot more straightforward doing. Yeah, that's that's what we're going with. A whole lot more doing. Where Langebolt's family crumbled under the Liberation Army's assault, Leptor's family is coming out swinging to take them out. Bloom sends out the sisters again. General Muhammad and another Ovo push to reclaim Bloom's lost territory. Bloom also sends out Ishtar, his daughter, who's also Ishtar's sister, and the evil Julius's lover. And she'll have possession of the Torhammer spell, which is the same one that can be a bit troublesome there in chapter 5. She has it. She can be a problem. Bloom also enlists Faval through offering to take care of his money woes to help with the orphans he and his sister, Patty, take care of. Repel all these forces and have Patty talk some sense into her brother. Take down Ishtar, who will be saved by Julius. The sisters from the last chapter get dropped and put Bloom in the dirt. Pretty straightforward event. And that's something about Thracia. And I think this is why there's a whole lot more life, we'll say, a lot more business brought about in a mid-quill game of Thracia that really doesn't get touched on as heavily as it could have, nor would it have worked well, I think. I think the pacing of it would have really
harmed if they tried to infuse more of that in this game, but there's a lot of quick chip-chopping taking down the Leptor family tree. As this is going on, Trevant sits tight. He's savoring Bloom's dismantling at the hands of a young boy, Celice, and his liberation army. The Thracian king also tells his son, Arione, his plans and the history behind why. He loathes how Thracia has been abused and mocked for its mercenary work. It's now time to change that. He's letting these two cut themselves down to size before he makes a move. Yet once Canote has been conquered and Bloom is dead, Trevant sends out Altena and some dragon riders. He wants them to wipe them all out. But Altena hesitates. She refuses to aid in slaughter, which... good for her, because Celice and company rip southward, taking Mies, as Trevant and Arione return back to Thracia Castle to rally their troops. She got pretty lucky, because, not only that, but you see a big misstep here, as Trevant's savoring this... yes, let them cut down to size. He's quickly realizing that Bloom might have been a little bit more of a paper tiger, and oof. That, or because certain events in a midquill really make that seem like it's rotten from the inside. But it is what it is. Now, compared to Chapter 7's Deluge of New Recruits, we get a small chance at 2. Previously mentioned Faval, Paddy's brother and possessor of the Ichval, this generation, and Levin and Fury's son and Fee's brother in this playthrough, Seti. And he is very much like his father's son, and he will rock the dragon of anyone who thinks they can handle blast of this ridiculous wind magic. He's very much a welcomed addition, even if Levin is still rather distant. Speaking of our bardly king, kingly bard, Levin warns Celice of Trevant's wily ways. Simply because he's quiet doesn't mean he isn't chomping at the bit. Case in point, when they conquer Canote, Celice and company have to deal with a little bit of an attack. So, plus, with Altena being a part of them, she could have been in a lot of trouble. However, in not attacking, we do not have to be on the receiving end of the Gabolg, which is nice, because that does not... no, I'm good. I do not need that. And then, with Mies under control, the Liberation Army is sitting pat. We are then told about the mood of Thracia. Trevant is seen as the true liberator to the rough and tumble crowd. He fights for Thracia, and many love him for it. Those in North Thracia loathe him for those same qualities. He very much gets the Alexander the Great treatment. Some idolized him, revered him for his deeds, while others spat at his name, damning those same actions, calling him the Demon King. Trevant, well, he isn't so fortunate to be given the means needed to so easily raise his kingdom's standards like Alexander the Great was. We open the 9th chapter, the aptly titled For Whose Sake, after the misstep by Trevant in gathering more troops, as well as his daughter, quote-unquote, Altena's unwillingness to act. Having to now push Celice and his army out of Mies Castle, Trevant has to put all of Thracia on notice, even General Hannibal, who is nicknamed the Shield of Thracia. Though not too interested in this fight brewing in Thracia's backyard, General Hannibal is convinced by Trevant to attack. While the king may be seen by a good deal of Thracians as a charismatic leader who will propel Thracia to newer and higher glory, he offers no compelling speech nor grand declarations. He simply uses Corpul, Hannibal's adopted son, as a hostage. Don't fight, and the boy dies. Corpul is left in Disler's clutches in the west, in Luthecia Castle. A little note about the wee lad is he is Silvia's son and Lean's brother. Silvia left her children at a convent in Darna, but never returned. Lean eventually became a dancer to travel around to try to find her, but Corpul was adopted and cared for by General Hannibal. Anyway, after leaving Luthecia, Trevant heads to Thracia Castle, where a Leptirian bishop named Judah is currently holding down the fort. The bishop reassures the Thracian ruler that reinforcements from Granville are coming. We cut to Celice and Levin. Levin's warning Celice of the imminent Thracian attack, but Sigurd and Theodora's son doesn't understand. Their fight is with the Empire, not Thracia. What is the purpose of this fight? Levin chastises the young leader. It'll make sense if you go about this properly, he tells him. When Celice brings up the Sad Dragon Knight by Mies from the last chapter, Levin blows up on him and pretty much says if you can't handle a little bloody nose, get your ass back to Tillenog. Oife tries to intervene for Celice, but Levin cuts in that everyone is tuckered out, but they must get to Granbell as quickly as possible. They have to stop Lopotosu's revival. Celice acknowledges this error and states it is their duty to give meaning to this upcoming battle. From there, we spin off and if Finn is alive, he and Leif will have a conversation about the aforementioned female Dragon Knight. Finn notes the rarity, even for Thracian warriors, but Leif doesn't really get why that's strange. Finn notes that she is holding the Gabolg, and she has the same aura as Leif's father, that of Saint Noba. Through the powers of inference, and a little bit of stretching, he believes Trant took Altena and the Gabolg to use them for his own purposes. He then tells Leif that he will have to talk to her, as he may be the only one to talk some sense into her. That's when the fighting breaks out. Altena with a squadron of dragon riders heads straight for them. Hannibal stays pat despite the danger to Corporal, but he's ready. And when Leif knifes his way through and talks to Altena, he tells her that Trant killed their parents. They are actually siblings, and that spear she holds, the Holy Lance of Leinster, that's the Gabolg. She'll think he's speaking crazy, but he tells her to look at him. Look clearly, look carefully. You'll know if I'm lying or not, Altena. A bit unnerved by the event, she'll actually head back to Thracia Castle to confront Trant about these details, which he makes no effort to hide. And he goes on to say that death is riddled all throughout the nature of war. What's done is done, and though he killed Quan and Ethlin, he raised her. She tries to attack him, but Arione, who's Trant's son, subdues her. Trant gives his son the Gungnir spear and heads out with his own troops, leaving the future of Thracia up to his son and whatever choices he decides to make. Hannibal also attacks when he sees the king actually putting his life on the line. Celice and company need to do a little pruning, spare Hannibal, cut down his forces, and he'll rush back to the castle to try to regroup. You can block General Hannibal's retreat, which will make it easier to recruit him here in a moment. Also, take care of Trant, and Arione will release Altena, who goes and joins Celice's army. Arione warns her, though, that the next time they meet will be on the battlefield. Once Altena reaches Celice, she'll ask to join, and realized Leif was telling the truth. She was immediately reminded of her father and mother, and pleads to try to save Prince Arione, which they will try to do. For the moment, you'll want to skip Luthecia's castle with Hannibal, because in capturing it, you actually will lose this unit. Instead, skip over and go and capture Cappadocia and free Corporal, who will then run to talk some sense into his father. Thus, you'll be adding Hannibal, the last new unit, to join. Hurrah! Also, he has the big shield ability, which is nice. Cool, it's great that there's actually... we get that. Very handy for a unit that we really won't be using too much in this game. Corporal isn't terribly helpful either, but another healer can't hurt. Of the group of units that do join, Altena is the champ, possessing the Gabolg and being a Dragon Knight. She'll dunk on a lot of enemies and be quite handy, moving about like a madwoman. Can't go wrong with that. With Cappadocia and Luthecia conquered, Musar, leading troops from Granbell, attack. He can be tough if you don't have a magic defense unit, but with Seti on our team, Musar and his troops will fall. Judah and Killer Ballistae, love that, are waiting in Thracia. While Judah isn't too much different than Kutuzov from Chapter 7, the Killer Ballistae do not make it fun. It's ridiculous. They're weak and easy to chop down, along with Judah, but if they hit, they will take units down rather quickly. Once Thracia is under Celice and the Liberation Army's control, Levin informs the leader that all the messengers sent to Arione calling for a truce have been rebuked. A final fight for Thracia will unfold. Arione sends out the three-headed dragon, which is 3 groups of Dragon Knights sent to reclaim lost territory, except Thracia, while his own group waits for an assault. Depending on positioning of units, the 3 battalions can be a bit of a headache, but not awful to contend with. However, it's Arione that's the problem. He has 16 hefty fighters. Some have sleep swords. Swell. Great. Wonderful. Love that. It's just a bunch of rough and tumbling dragon riders. Arione is not a pushover either. However, they must all go down, and down they shall go. Then, Thracia Castle is under the Liberation Army's control. Celice will ask about Arione, and Levin will say that Prince Julius appeared and took Arione with him. He also mentions that the prince has the ability of return and recover, shamanistic powers, but his true strength comes from the Dark Lord. And that's actually where it kind of cuts. Ulysses is starting to put his fingers in the pie a little bit here. Whew. Anyway, reflecting some similar motions of Sigurd's fights in Augustria, attacks from multiple angles, lots of moving groups, pride in their home countries, Chapter 9 also mirrors the fighting Sigurd dealt with in Celice in Chapter 4. These two chapters also continue the trend of keeping your wits about you. Soloing isn't an easy thing to do. It's possible, but that's the great thing about this game. You'll be wanting to make sure your groupings are sensible and resilient, either by being defensive kings or doing enough healing to restore those units to a beefier form before another flood of enemies arrives. On the musical side of things, Chapter 8 has this triumphant tinge that makes me think of Sigurd's generation, while Chapter 9 feels hesitantly restrained. I enjoy both of them as tunes, though I wouldn't set them as my favorite. Either one. As for Trevant, Arione, and Thracia, the muddled fights begin to clear. Trevant and Thracia, throughout history, have been a thorn in the side of its neighbors. They inadvertently allowed the Loptir sect to grow like some festering wound. Trevant's actions, cunning, but with his eyes so focused on the immediate, he lost the mid to late game. The fight's still personal, but with degrees of separation, and the darkness of his villainy doesn't quite rise to the level of others. I feel Trevant comes off a little bit softer than what he could have been with his previous treachery. However, that could simply be me buying into the propaganda that this is war, and that's all there is to it. While the ever-growing presence of evil has yet to be properly confronted, a lot of the baddies continue the trend of simply being on the other side. We have our bandits, pirates, and most of them are fighting for their people, their lands, gained through ill actions or not. The truly dark deeds of the first Loptir Empire are repeating, but these are people who Celice and the Liberation Army have fought mostly on the fringe. Seated with Loptir followers and not fighting against the child sacrifices has made them accomplices to the foul deeds, growing in number as Lobotos's revival nears. This whole spiel is what Levin has been trying to hammer into Celice's head. They're all prongs of the same awful weapon pointing directly at Yggdrasil's throat, before spearing its way into the worlds. Lobotos's rage and hatred for mankind still burn brightly, and Celice needs to understand why it's so important to extinguish its fires. But words are only so effective at expressing how dire something is. The warning about this damnable fire is only a collection of words. To come face to face with the conflagration burning the Yggdrasil continent at its core will awaken the Liberation Army's and Celice's spirit to bring the fight to Miletos, with Celice's father's homeland off in the distance. Currently, under the direct rule of the man whose actions 17 years ago brought the world to this terrible precipice, teetering precariously between the darkness and the light.